My name is Trisha May Carriedo and I am here to discuss with you the speech acts and conversations. Before we start, let's read the given statements. You did a good job. You've been late for hours. Be a lifesaver. Good day. Sorry, it was my mistake. Please observe social distance. These statements are some examples of speech acts. What is speech acts, by the way? Speech acts is any of the acts that may be performed by a speaker in making an utterance, such as stating, asking, or giving a warning. Utterances is a set of phrases with an intentional action. It can be more in just a statement. For example, compliments, invitations, complaints, or even an apology. Speech acts and conversation requires the language and use, the sentence structure, and the function of utterance. In a big concept, when we speak language, we are performing speech acts. There are 6 classifications of speech acts. First is representatives. It represents a state of affairs, statements, claims, hypotheses, descriptions, suggestions. Representatives can generally be characterized as true or false. Second is commissives. Commit a speaker to a course of action, promises, pledges, threats, and vows. Third is directives, are intended to get the address to carry out an action, commands, requests, challenges, invitations, entities, or dares. The fourth one is declarations. It brings about a state of affairs they name, such as blessings, hirings, firings, baptisms, arrest, marrying, or declaring a mistrials. The fifth one is expressives. It indicates the speaker's psychological state or attitude, such as greetings, apologies, congratulations, condolences, and thanksgivings. The last one is the verdictives. It makes assessments or judgments, ranking, assessing, appraising, and also condoning. So here's the table for you to understand more the classification of speech acts. First is representatives. They make words fit the world. The speaker believes a certain situation to be true. Second is commissives. They make the world fit the words. The speaker intended a certain situation. For an example, I'll be back. Directives. They make the world fit words. The speaker wants a certain situation. For an example, don't touch that. 4 is declarations. Words change the world. For an example is, I pronounce you husband and wife. The fifth one is expressives. They make words fit the world. For an example, I'm sorry. According to Kevin J. Van Hooser, interpretation is the process of inferring authorial intentions and of ascribing illocutionary acts. Here are the types of speech acts, the locutions and the illocutions. Locutions, the act of making a meaningful utterance or what is actually said by the speaker. It is the basic utterance producing a meaningful linguistic expressions. For an example, it is raining outside. That is the literal meaning and it is a locutionary act. Is illocutions. Speaker's intention in delivering an utterance or what is verbally accomplished by what is said. It is the reason for uttering something. For an example, a promise or a warning. Another example is, it is raining outside. The utterance would mean the speaker wishes or wants the receiver to use an umbrella if he or she goes out. Or, the speaker wants you not to go out because it's still raining outside. One is the perlocution, what the hearer does in response to the utterance. Here's the summary of the 3 types of speech acts. we use a statement, "It is raining outside." The locutionary act is what we say or the actual word of the message. The elocutionary act is what we mean when we say it, or what the speakers mean to convey. The third one is a perlocutionary act, what we accomplish by saying it, or the hearer's action to the speaker's message. Distinguishing among speech acts. We begin our analysis by distinguishing between two broad types of speech act, comparing the following two utterances. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Change the state of things in our declarations. Second is, "It is going to be a very windy day." Make assertions or state opinions in our representatives. Appropriateness conditions and successful declarations. A philosopher named John Charles classified it into 4 categories. The first one is the propositional content condition. It requires merely that the words of the sentence be conventionally associated with the intended speech act and convey the content of the act. Or, the participant must be able to understand the language. Second is the preparatory condition. It requires a conventionally recognized context in which the speech act is embedded. The third one is sincerity condition. It requires the speaker to be sincere in uttering the declaration, or the speaker intend to carry out the future actions. The last one is the essential condition. It requires that the involved parties all intend the result, or the speaker create an obligation to carry out the action as promised. Successful requests and other speech acts. The appropriateness conditions are useful in describing not only declarations and commissives but all other types of speech act, and its form must be a conventionally recognized one for making a request. That's all for today. Thank you for listening.
So, hi guys, I am your reporter, Nicole Martinez, and this is my topic, and it is about the cooperative principle. What is cooperative principle? It is enunciated by the philosopher H. Grace. It is also called principle of conversation. The principles that govern the interpretation of utterances are diverse and complex. So what is utterance or utterances? In a simple meaning, it is a word or statement or dialogue that is given. They differ somewhat from culture to culture. The cooperative principle is a principle of conversation that was proposed by Greece in the year of 1975, stating that participants expect that each will make a conversational contribution such as is required at the stage at which occurs by the accepted purpose or direction of the talk exchange. Who are involved? Participants are the speakers who are assumed to be the one who is being cooperative, and they make conversational implications about what is said. Speakers count on hearers' disposition to work out on what is meant by the speakers. So let's discuss about the cooperative principle. Along with the conversational maxims, partly accounts for the conversational implicatures. Participants assume that speakers is being cooperative, and thus they make conversational implicatures about what is said. So, here are the maxim of conversation, or the general principle. The first is the maxim of quantity. Second, maxim of relevance or maxim of relation. Third is maxim of manner. And the last is the maxim of quality. What are the difference with maxim of quantity and quality? Maxim of quantity is that speakers are expected to give as much information as is necessary for their interlocutors to understand their utterances, but to give no more information than is necessary. While the maxim of quality, Speakers and writers are expected to say only what they believe to be true and to have evidence for what they say. Take note that the maximum of quantity is where one tries to be as informative as one possibly can and give as much information as is needed and no more, while the maximum of quality, where one tries to be truthful and does not give information that is false or that is not supported by the evidence. The next maxim is about maximum of relevance or maximum of relation. This maxim directs to speakers to organize their utterances in such a way that they are relevant to the ongoing context. And take note that you need to be relevant at the time of the utterance. The maximum of relation or maximum of relevance where one tries to be relevant and says things that are pertinent to the discussion. And lastly, the maximum of manner. People follow a set of miscellaneous rules that are grouped under the maxim of manner. This maxim dictates that speakers and writers avoid ambiguity and obscurity and be orderly in their utterance. Always remember that you need to be orderly and be clear. This maxim is about when one tries to be as clear, as brief, and as orderly as one can in what one says and where one avoids obscurity and ambiguity. Of course, we have maximum of cooperative principle, or the general principle, and once the interlocutors or the speakers avoid one of the maxim of cooperative principle, of course you have already violated the cooperative principle or the maxim of cooperative principle. It has no secret that people sometimes violate the maxims of cooperative principle. Certainly not all speakers are completely truthful. Others have not observed that efficiency is the desired Western norm in conversational interaction. More interestingly, speakers are sometimes forced by cultural norms or other external factors to violate a maxim. The need to adhere to social conventions of politeness sometimes invites people to violate maxims of the cooperative principle. So that's all. Thank you. We have already discussed the cooperative principle, the maxim of cooperative principle, and also the violation of the cooperative principle.
Hi guys, I am Carl Andrew de la Cruz and my topic is all about indirect speech acts. Indirect speech. Indirect speech is a means of expressing the content of statements, questions, or other utterances without quoting them explicitly as is done in direct speech. As mentioned earlier, interrogative structures can be used to make polite requests for action, imperative structures can be used to ask for information, and so on. Such uses of a structure with one meaning to accomplish the different task frequently play a role in ordinary interaction, as in this exchange between colleagues who have stayed at the office after dark. Kyla, is the boss in? Ryan, the light's on in her office. Oh, thanks. Ryan's answer makes no apparent reference to the information Kyla is seeking. Thus, in theory, it would appear to violate the maxim of relevance. Yet, Kyla is satisfied with the answer, recognizing that the literal interpretation of Ryan's reply violates the maxim of relevance, but assuming that as a cooperative interlocutor, Ryan is being relevant. Kyla seeks an indirect interpretation. To help her, she knows certain facts about their boss' habits, that she works in her own office, that she does not work in the dark, and that she is not in the habit of leaving the light on when gone for the day. Relying on this information, Kyla infers in interpretation from Ryan's utterance. Ryan believes that boss is in. Ryan's reply is an example of an indirect speech act, one that involves an apparent violation of the cooperative principle but is in fact indirectly cooperative. For example, an indirect speech act can be based on an apparent violation of the maxim of quality. When we describe a friend as someone who never parts with a dime, we don't mean it literally. We are exaggerating. By exaggerating the information, we may seem to be flouting the maxim of quality. But listeners usually appreciate that the statement should not be interpreted literally and make an appropriate adjustments in their interpretation. Characteristics of indirect speech acts. Indirect speech acts violate at least one maxim of the cooperative principle. Number 2. The literal meaning of the location of an indirect speech act differs from its intended meaning. Number 3. Hearers and readers identify indirect speech acts by noticing that an utterance has characteristics. 1. It violates a maxim, and by assuming that the interlocutor is following the cooperative principle. Number 4. As soon as hearers and readers have identified an indirect speech act, they identify its intended meaning with the help of knowledge of the context and of the world. Indirect speech acts and shared knowledge. One prerequisite for a successful indirect speech act is that interactors share sufficient background about the context of the interaction, about each other and their society, and about the world in general. If Jacob asks Emma, "Are you done with your sociology paper?" and she replies, "Is Rome in Spain?" Jacob will certainly recognize the answer as an indirect speech act, but whether or not he can interpret it will depend on his knowledge of geography. Using and understanding indirect speech acts requires familiarity with both language and society. Politeness. Indirect speech acts appear to be complicated way of communicating. Not only must you spot them, but you must then go through a complex reasoning process to interpret them. One might think it would be more sufficient to communicate directly. The fact is, though, that indirect speech acts have uses besides asking and answering questions, criticizing others, and so on. They sometimes add humor and sometimes show politeness. Respecting independence and showing involvement. There are two basic aspects to being polite. The first rests on the fact that human beings respect one another's privacy, independence, and physical space. We avoid intruding on other people's lives, try not to be overly inquisitive about their activities, and take care not to impose our presence on them. We respect their independence and do not interrupt. Sometimes call this negative politeness. On the other hand, we let people know we enjoy their company, feel comfortable with them, like something in their personality, or are interested in their well-being. We show involvement, what some call positive politeness. In conversation, interlocutors give one another messages about their needs for independence and their wishes for involvement, and acknowledge one another's needs for both types of politeness as well. The expectations that others won't ask embarrassing questions about our personal lives stems from the need for independence. That's all. Thank you.
Good day, I am Mayra Dumalaan and our topic for today is about the organization of conversation. If it seems surprising that casual conversation should be organized by rules, the reason is that, as in most speech events, more attention is paid to content than to organization. We take the organization of conversations for granted. As we all know, a conversation occurs when people cooperate with each other in order to introduce and sustain a single focus of attention by taking turn with each other. A conversation can be viewed as a series of speech acts, greetings, inquiries, congratulations, farewells, and many more. In order to explain effectively, here is an example of a conversation that has no organization.
Hey Jonathan, I got a puppy yesterday. His name's Max. He's a standard poodle and he's really cute.
Oh, I have a dog too. His name's Cecil, and we take him for walks and stuff.
Yeah,
Oh, and Cecil? Yeah, he goes up to my bed to go to sleep.
yeah, and he
My dog's really cool because we like take him for walks and we run with him.
In the first example video, we could see how conversation will went if it's not organized. To accomplish the work of the said speech acts, some organization is essential. We take turns at speaking, answer questions, mark the beginning and end of conversation, and make corrections when they are needed. Here is another example video that will show how conversation will went if it's well organized.
Hey Jonathan, I got a dog yesterday. His name's Max and he's a standard poodle and he's really cute.
Oh, I have a dog too. His name is Cecil.
Yeah, that's cool. My dog, he can do like tricks. I take him outside and I play with him.
I really want to tell Sam about my dog, but he really wants to tell me about his dog. We should probably take turns. Yeah, I taught him up and lay down.
I taught him sit and lay down and I taught him how to roll over and fetch.
Oh, you taught him a lot. Maybe our dog should meet up sometime.
Oh, that's cool.
You need to take turns speaking and listening while having a conversation. If you cut friends off and don't let them join the conversation, you are not having a conversation. You are lecturing them. People will only want to talk to you if you stop and listen to what they have to say too.
Smooth transitions from one speaker to the other can be signaled by intonations like lowering one's voice, clear pauses or overlaps such as interruptions. Conversations that are felt awkward reveal an absence of familiarity and a sense of distance.
What's your major, Dave?
English. Well, I haven't really decided yet.
So do you want to be a teacher?
No, not really. Well, not if I can help it.
What?
I mean, it's oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Silences are not attributable to either speaker when both have completed a turn. If one speaker actually turns over the floor to another and the other does not speak, then the silence is attributable to the second speaker and more is being communicated than is said.
Dave, I'm going to the store. Dave? Dave, is something wrong?
What? What's wrong?
Never mind.
Silence is not as problematic as an overlap. Overlaps typically occur when both speakers attempt to initiate talk. In accordance with a local management system, one speaker will stop to allow the other to have the floor. There are 3 different types of overlaps. In a difficult first conversation with an unfamiliar person, as an expression of solidarity or closeness in expressing similar opinions or values, or when 2 speakers are competing for the floor. Types of floor-holding devices are, for example, avoiding open pauses at the end of a syntactic unit by filling each pause with or I wasn't talking about his first book. That was really just like a start, and so it doesn't count really. Another device is using certain expressions to indicate that there is a larger structure to your turn. Didn't you know about Lisa? Oh, it was when she left college. There are 3 points I'd like to make. Speakers expect their conversational partners to indicate that they are listening through head nods, smiles, and other facial expressions and gestures. The most common vocal indications are called back-channel signals. These types of signals provide feedback to the current speaker that the message is being received and that the listener is following. Less of these than you expect can create the impression that someone is not listening. More than you expect can give the impression that you are being rushed along. During telephone conversations, the absence of back channels may prompt the speaker to ask if the listener is still there. During face-to-face interaction, the absence of back channels may be interpreted as a way of withholding agreement, leading to an inference of disagreement.
Let's talk about adjacency pairs. Whenever we make an utterance, we expect a certain answer. For example, "Hi Patrick, how are you?"
Hi John, I'm good, and you?
In this example, "Hi Patrick, how are you?" would be the first part, and "Hi John, I'm good, and you?" would be the second part. Together, these are the so-called adjacency pairs. Let's have a look on some examples where the second part does not fit the first part.
Hello.
I like swimming. Obviously, "I like swimming" was not the expected answer, and therefore the second part does not fit the first part and is not an adjacency pair. Here are some more examples of adjacency pairs.
Hello, this is John speaking.
Good morning, sir. How may I help you?
Hi John, would you also like to have a cup of coffee?
Hi, Amy. Thanks. A cup of coffee would be nice. Here's another example of an unexpected answer.
Hi John, would you also like to have a cup of coffee?
What a lovely day, don't you think? Again, the answer is quite unexpected, and the second part does not fit the first part and is not an adjacency pair. Now let's take a closer look on that second part of the adjacency pair. When talking about the second part, we differentiate between the preferred social act and the dispreferred social act. For example, to the question, "Would you like to come over for dinner?" the expected answer would be yes, that sounds great, and therefore is the preferred social act. Whereas a refusal like "No, I'm too tired" would be an unexpected answer and therefore a dispreferred social act. Now let's take a closer look on a very special case of a dispreferred social act.
Would you like to come over for dinner?
It is natural for us to avoid a dispreferred social act. In this case, he's trying to avoid a direct refusal of the invitation. Since he cannot accept the invitation, he is silent. Therefore, silence indicates a dispreferred social act. Here are some other indicators for a dispreferred social act. Generally, we use more language for a dispreferred social act and less language for a preferred social act.
One useful mechanism in the covert organization of conversation is that certain turns have specific follow-up turns associated with them. Questions that request information take answers. The reply to a greeting is usually also a greeting, to an invitation, an acceptance or refusal, and so on. Certain sequences of turns go together as in these adjacency pairs. I'm Christina Kyla C. Villahen, and our main topic is adjacency pairs. What are adjacency pairs? According to Cambridge University Press of 2006, it is composed of two turns produced by different speakers which are placed adjacently and where the second utterance is identified as related to the first. Moreover, it includes such exchanges as question that should be answered, complaint that may be denied, offer that can either be accepted or declined, request to be granted, compliment or rejection, challenge or rejection, and instruction or receipt. Let us now discuss about the three characteristics of adjacency pairs according to Cambridge University Press of 2006. Number 1, they consist of two utterances, meaning there should always be more than one speaker where one speaks after the other. Number 2, the utterances are adjacent, which implies that it is turn-taking, and what is in the first part of the pair determines what needs to be on the second part. Number 3, different speakers produce each utterance. It means that the speaking of the first utterance by the first speaker provokes a responding utterance of the second speaker. For better understanding, here are some examples of adjacency pairs. Request for information and providing information. Adam asks Betty where is the milk he bought, wherein he is requesting for information, then Betty replies on the counter, providing the information he needs. Request for a favor and granting. The guest asks the host a favor which is using the host's phone. The request is granted when the host answered sure. Again, adjacency pairs comprise two turns, one of which directly follows the other. In a question and answer adjacency pair, the question is the first part and the answer is the second part. Here are other examples of adjacency pairs. Invitation and acceptance. In this example, Alex is inviting Bert for a dinner on Saturday, which is then accepted by Bert. Another one is apology and acceptance. Ellie apologizes to Dave for bothering him, which Dave accepted, saying that it's alright. Let us now discuss about the structural characteristics of adjacency pairs. Number 1, they are contagious. The two parts of an adjacency pair are contagious and are uttered by different speakers. A speaker who makes a statement before responding to a question that has been asked sounds strange and can provoke frustration because adjacency pairs are structured to be consecutive. In this example, we can see that Adam is asking Betty about the milk he bought, but Betty uttered an unrelated statement, which is the "they said on the radio the weather would clear up by noon" part, before answering Adam's question, which made it sound improper since question and answer type of adjacency pairs demands for immediate answer. Number 2, they are ordered. The two parts of an adjacency pair are ordered, except in game shows like Jeopardy, the answer to a question cannot precede the question. Ordinarily, one cannot accept an invitation before it has been offered, and an apology cannot be accepted before it is uttered except sarcastically. It simply implies what I've already stated earlier, and that is adjacency pairs comprise two turns, one of which directly follows the other. Number 3, they are matched. The first and second parts of an adjacency pair are appropriately matched. Appropriate matching avoid odd exchanges such as the following. This example shows how strange it is if the second speaker's statement is not related to the first speaker's statement. Kimi asked Sasa for coffee, but Sasa answered something unrelated, which defies the rule of adjacency pairs to be matched. Sometimes, the requirement that the two parts of an adjacency pair be contagious is violated in a socially recognized way, and it is called as insertion sequence. In this example, Adam was asking about the location of the milk, but instead of providing an answer, Betty throws another question to confirm what milk Adam is talking about. That part was the insertion sequence, which halts the flow of actual information that are being requested by the first speaker. Certain kinds of adjacency pairs are marked by a preference for a particular type of second part. For example, requests, assessments, and invitations have preferred and dispreferred answers, and these are called preferred and dispreferred responses. This is an example of preferred response. Kay stated that she enjoyed the movie before asking Frank if he enjoyed it too. It implies that Kay is expecting that Frank has the same thoughts as her about the movie, which Frank confirmed. However, an example of this preferred response is this. Kay stated that she enjoyed the movie before asking Frank if he enjoyed it too. It implies that Kay is expecting that Frank and her have the same thoughts about the movie, but Frank denied it by saying, "No, I thought it was crummy." The preferred second part can be an agreement or argument to an assessment as well. In the example of second part being an agreement, Fiona stated that Ralph is a good writer, then Kian agreed to it. However, on the example of second part being an argument, Fiona stated that Ralph is a good writer, but Kian did not agree and stated his reason why he believes otherwise. For another comparison between preferred and dispreferred responses, here are other examples. Preferred second parts tend to follow the first part without a pause and to consist of structurally simple utterances. Annie asked Michael for lunch and he immediately answered sure means he fully agreed to it. However, these preferred second parts tend to be preceded by a pause and to begin with a hesitation particle such as well or For example, Annie asked Michael for lunch, but instead of providing an immediate and direct answer, he started with and pauses represented by the ellipsis. Michael later on declined Annie's invitation. Moreover, these preferred second parts often begin with a token of agreement or acceptance or with an expression of appreciation or apology and characteristically include an explanation. In this example, Wade tried to borrow Frank's phone but Frank is using it too, so he apologized, then he explained and offered Wade a token of agreement which is for him to wait until Frank is done using his phone. Conversations are opened in socially recognized ways. Before beginning their first conversation of the day, conversationalists normally greet each other. Greetings exemplify opening sequences, utterances that ease people into a conversation. They convey the message, I wanna talk to you. Greetings are usually reserved for acquaintances who have not seen each other for a while or as opening sequences for longer conversations between strangers. The second topic of my report is about opening sequences which are being uttered at the beginning of every conversation. In this example, Jeff greeted his office mate Stan to open a conversation about work. On the other hand, greetings are not the only type of opening sequences. Very few conversations do not begin with some type of opening sequences, which often happens when we talk to someone close to us. For example, Joe and Eric's conversation about a broken tooth. It sounds like a conversation between two close friends wherein they tell each other even about the smallest things. From here, Eric didn't greet Joe. He just asked him, guess what? And that starts their conversation. However, some situations do not require a greeting, as with a stranger approaching in the street to ask for the time. Excuse me, sir, do you know what time it is? The expression, excuse me, sir, serves as an opening sequence appropriate to the context. Conversationalists also use opening sequences to announce that they are about to invade the personal space of their interlocutors. Here, two friends are talking on a park bench next to a stranger. At a pause in their conversation, the stranger interjects. Excuse me, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help hearing that you were talking about Dayton, Ohio. I'm from Dayton. And the conversation then goes on among the three people. Opening sequences may serve as a display of one's voice to enable the interlocutor to recognize who is speaking, especially at the beginning of telephone conversations. In this example, the phone has just rung in Alfred's apartment. His hello is not a greeting but is more like a question, trying to provoke the person on the other line to speak so he will know who he is talking to. In the second turn, Helen displays her voice to enable Alfred to recognize her. In the third turn, Alfred indicates his recognition and simultaneously provides the second part of the greeting adjacency pair initiated in the previous turn. Opening sequences in other cultures. In many cultures, the opening sequence, appropriate to a situation in which two people meet after not having met for a while, is an inquiry about a person's health, as in the American greeting, "How are you?" which is not meant literally. Indeed, most speakers respond with the conventional upbeat formula, "I'm fine," or "fine thanks," even when feeling terrible. In other cultures, the conventional greeting may take a different form. In Mandarin Chinese, conversationalists ask, "Have you eaten rice yet?" And when two people meet on a road in Tonga, they ask, "Where is your going directed to?" In formal contexts, or when differences of social status exist between participants, many cultures require a lengthy and formulaic opening sequence. In Fiji, when an individual visits a village, a highly ceremonial introduction is conducted before any interaction takes place. This event involves speeches that are regulated by a complex set of rules governing what must be said, and when, and by whom. Functions of opening sequences. A final aspect of opening sequences in which cultural differences are found is the relative importance of their various functions. In telephone conversations in the United States, opening sequences serve primarily to identify speakers and get the interlocutor's attention. In France, opening sequences for telephone conversations normally include an apology for invading someone's privacy. In an American telephone conversation, such an opening sequence is not customary. Thus, in two relatively similar cultures, the role played by the opening sequence in a telephone call is different. As a result, the French can find Americans intrusive and impolite on a telephone, while Americans are puzzled by French apologetic formulas, which they find pointless and exceedingly ceremonious. Conversations must also be closed appropriately. A conversation can be closed only when the participants have said everything they wanted to say. Furthermore, a conversation must be closed before participants begin to feel uncomfortable about having nothing more to say. As a result, conversationalists carefully negotiate the timing of closings, seeking to give the impression of wanting neither to rush away nor to linger on. These objectives are reflected in the characteristics of the closing sequence. The last topic I'm going to discuss is about closing sequences which are being uttered to end a conversation. A closing sequence includes a conclusion to the last topic covered in the conversation. From this example, before ending the conversation of four speakers about going on a party, most of them stated, "See you there," implying that they are really going to the event. The first step of a closing sequence helps ensure that no one has anything further to say. This is accomplished by a simple exchange of short turns such as "okay" or "well." Typically, such pre-closing sequences are accompanied by a series of pauses between and within turns that decelerate the exchange and prepare for closing down the interaction. In the following example, Dana takes the opportunity to bring up one last topic, after which Carl initiates another closing sequence. Sometimes, after a pre-closing exchange, speakers refer to the original motivation for the conversation. In a courtesy call to inquire about someone's health, the caller sometimes refers to this fact after the pre-closing exchange. However, if the purpose of a conversation was to seek a favor, this short exchange might take place. Finally, conversations close with a parting expression like "bye," "goodbye," "see you," and "catch you later." A striking thing about closings is their deceptive simplicity. In fact, closings are complex. For participants, exercise great care not to give the impression that they are rushing away or that they wanted to linger. And they try to ensure that everything on the unwritten agenda of any participant has been touched on. As the cliche goes, it's always been hard to say goodbye. Lastly, however informal and abbreviated they may be, closing sequences are characterized by a great deal of negotiated activity, for it implies that the conversation is over and the speakers have already said everything they have to. Thank you. I hope you learned something from my report.
Conversational routines. Both openings and closings are more routinized than the core parts of conversations. Core parts are relatively less predictable, while people are trained from childhood not to ask certain kinds of questions. Because of the routinized nature of openings and closings, conversations can be begun and, equally important, ended expeditiously. Let us now proceed to repairs. A repair takes place in conversation when a participant feels the need to correct herself or another speaker, to edit a previous utterance, or simply to restate something. Example number 1. Speaker: I was going to Mary's Sue's house. Example number 2. Speaker: and I went to the doctor's to get a new prescription because my old one ran out. Example number 3. Alex: aren't those daffodils pretty? Kate: they're pretty, but they're narcissus. Example number 4. Winston: Dad came to visit us over the spring break. David: what? Winston: I said Dad was here over the spring break. In example number 2, the trouble source is the fact that the speaker cannot find a word. In example number 4, David initiates a repair because he has not heard or has not understood Winston's utterance. Notes: to initiate a repair is to signal that one has not understood or has misheard an utterance, that a piece of information is incorrect, or one is having trouble finding a word. To resolve a repair, someone must repeat the misunderstood or misheard utterance, correct the inaccurate information, or supply a word. To initiate a repair, these are the things you can do. Repeat part of the utterance to be repaired. Abruptly stop speaking. Use particles and expressions like I mean, or that is. Example number 5. Speaker: I am absolutely sure it was him that I saw last night prowling around. Example number 6. Nelson: and here you have what's called the Juan. The carburetor? Nelson: yeah, that's right, the carburetor. Notes: repairs can be initiated and resolved by the person who uttered the words that needs to be repaired, or by another conversationalist. There are 4 possibilities. Number 1. Repairs that are self-initiated and self-repaired. Number 2. Repairs that are other-initiated and self-repaired. Number 3. Repairs that are self-initiated and other-repaired. Number 4. Repairs that are other-initiated and other-repaired. With these possibilities, what would conversationalists do? Number 1. Conversationalist shows a strong preference for self-initiated and self-repairs. Number 2. Conversationalists wait for clear signals of communicative distress before repairing an utterance made by someone else. Number 3. Conversationalists provide assistance to others in initiating and resolving repairs only if no other option is available. Next topic is about politeness and organization Force in conversation. Violating the turn-taking principles by interrupting or by failing to take turns is considered impolite. There are convenient ways in which we communicate respect for independence and involvement. When we expect them to allow us to both initiate and resolve or repair ourselves, we are expecting them to respect our right to make contribution to the conversation. Next is cross-cultural communication. When people of different cultures have different norms about what type of politeness is required in a particular context, trouble can easily arise. As a consequence of such variability, people from different cultures often misinterpret each other's signals. Examples: in the conversations of Athabascan Indians, a pause of up about 1.5 seconds does not necessarily indicate the end of a turn, but in European Americans, they considered a pause of more than 1 second sufficient to signal the end of a turn. Last is computers, speech acts, and conversation. As we saw in the previous chapter in this section, pragmatics has not yet been truly explored in computational linguistics and corpus studies. It remains necessary to create models of politeness, turn-taking, and the other phenomena.